this video, we're going to cover some of the core authoring tools. These are authoring tools that you will use in conjunction with knowledge topics and actions in order to improve the end user experience. These tools will help you identify and leverage intent in many types of ways. In this video, I'm going to go over the concepts, give you some sneak peeks into where you find them in the product, but then in future modules, we'll get to use them in real business use cases. I'm going to start with entities, as this is one of the most popular authoring tools there are. Entities, don't think of them like maybe you heard about entities in the past as an agency or as a database something. Think of an entity as a term or a list of terms that need to be captured in the conversation. So I might say in the conversation, do you have toys for puppies? You notice that I did that. But let's say I want to, from a business perspective, whenever toys is used, I want to capture that word. That term is important to me because I might use it in a prompt or might use it for a different reason. So in order to grab it out of that sentence and put it into its own space, I use an entity. Out of the box, there are these pre-built entities which give you a really good idea of what an entity is for. So you have your typical things like age, city, color. And again, think about the fact that people are, and this is not all of them, this is a subset of all of the different entities available, but think of a customer saying something in the conversation, and you want to pull something specific out of it, such as their age. Maybe you want that age pulled out of that sentence so that you can add it to something, like after age 14, you get a special discount, for instance. Or if you live in this country, such as the United States, that can be used as a condition to give you other content. So you're grabbing information out of a string without having to worry about string manipulation, which is what you may have done in the past, to pull things out of a string that you really need. In Copilot Studio, you'll use entities for that. It's very good at managing these entities. And you have two choices. You can use the entities that are built in, and I often use the person name, the city, the country, a date. All of this is really well understood by natural language, and it will pull these out for you. Now, when it pulls them out, like I mentioned earlier, it will put them into a variable for you. So an entity is a type of variable. Now, in addition to the pre-built entities, you also have the option to make your own custom entities. And these custom entities have to do with your particular business scenario, where you may need, like, for instance, in this case, I have created an entity for the Petco agent that includes all the types of pets that our veterinary services will treat, right? Dogs, cats, avian, poultry, rabbits, and rodents, for instance. That's all that we treat. So if they put horse in the conversation, it ain't going to grab it, and we probably can't serve that horse. So I'm making a custom list here to show all the veterinary services animals that we service. Now, you'll notice that for every item we add, and it's just like a spreadsheet, you'll add each item, just one after the other. You also have the ability to add synonyms. Like avian is a very vet-centric term for bird life or birds that fly. So you might want to add a synonym for bird because it's unlikely probably that your customers will use the word avian. They'll probably say my bird is sick, right? But it'll know if it sees bird that that's the entity for avian, and anything that you have configured to happen with that entity will therefore happen. So it will pull these words out. Like for instance, here, there's a section called rodents, but what's covered there? I added guinea pig, mice, rats, hamsters. I could add whatever I want as a synonym for what we classify as a rodent. And excuse me if you don't classify these as rodents. And because I have smart matching turned on, it will understand any spelling mistakes that are made. Like, so it'll understand if somebody types guinea pig wrong, or even if I type guinea pig wrong, it'll pick up that term and it will put it in the category of, excuse me, of rodents. Okay, so this is really a beautiful feature in Copilot Studio, the ability to create your own custom entities, and therefore those entities are easy to pull out of expressions that the end user may say in the conversation panel. You can pull those out no matter how much text they had in there and get the right thing in your variables. All right, so that's entities, and we will get a chance to use them, don't worry. Next is variables. Now, I didn't start with variables because I know you might be wondering why. Most people who have worked with the Power Platform have handled variables in some way, because there isn't a Power Platform product that doesn't have variables. But let's say you're brand new to Power Platform and you haven't used variables before. What's a variable? Well, think of it as a box. Here we have this magic box, okay? And the box is magic because we can put stuff in it on demand, right? So this particular box, I'm going to put in it the number 4. Okay, so now the number 4 is in that box. I can leave it in there and call that box from whatever. Like I need it to do something and I need to find out what's in the magic box. I can just reference the name of that magic box and it will give me back the number 4. It could stay there forever as the number 4, or I can be very dynamic and let that number change. So for instance, maybe I asked the customer how many of product X do they want to order, and they typed 4 yesterday. And so the variable that was used yesterday was the number 4. But today they said they want 14. So we just swap out that number 4 with the number 14. Typically, variables will have the same type. So this is a number. So you'll see trends in variables where they have a particular data type. Okay, so let's look at some examples of variables. First, you're going to see system variables. And you've already met the bot name variable. That was the first, probably the first variable that you met in Copilot Studio, because it puts it in your conversation start. So that it picks up whatever you named the agent. And then I showed you if you don't want that, you could change it to whatever you want. You don't have to use the variable. But the key to finding variables is this little X right here. Wherever you see that little X in curly quotes, that means you can select or create a variable of your own. So look out for that. So if I was typing in here and I wanted to get this variable, I would click after the R in your and then hit that X. That would enable me to select variables from the list of variables, whether they be custom or system. And in many cases, you'll have the create new variable capability where you can create your own brand new variable that you can use. Okay. You will see this little X a lot of places. Just know when you see it, that means now you can use a variable there, either a static variable or a variable that will change. There are 3 different types of variables. There are global variables, system variables, and environment variables, okay? And when you're talking about these things that are out of the box, think system. You can make a variable global. Environment variables can be set on the environment level, but they cannot be edited in Copilot Studio. Okay, so does that mean you can't make your own variables? God forbid. We can definitely create our own variables. These are defined by you as you need them. Okay, in this particular example over here on the right, what I have done is I have set up some variables for a Power Automate flow. I have 2 defined here, an image prompt variable and an image style variable. But here I'm capturing in a variable a string, which is whatever the end user said was the prompt for the image they wanted to generate. And then I have another variable down here that I created called image style. which is capturing a string for the style that will be used in the image. Now, there's also a variable here that the Power Automate flow is expecting, and I hard coded it. So you can, remember I said it could be static, it could always be the same. So here I've hard coded it. I have not referred to a dynamic variable in this particular case. So the key to remember is that when you click on these chevrons, you will get directed into these variable locations whenever the expectation has that little X, right? Variable needed, it will lead you to whatever custom and system variables that you have available, and you can use them there, okay? So keep that in mind for now. We'll get to do more complex things later. All right, let's talk about formulas. Formulas are exactly what it sounds like. They're formulas. Again, if you've used the Power Platform, you have seen Power FX formulas all over the Power Platform, and this is no different, okay? If you have not used the Power Platform and you have not seen Power FX formulas, then think about Excel expressions that you have used, like sum, average, date diff. Those are all expressions that you would use in Excel cells to manage formulas, okay? So this is the same thing, just fully integrated into the product. And most of the Excel functions are supported, but not all, okay? So here's an example of a formula here where we've asked a question, and maybe we'll do this together. We're asking them their name. And right here, we're saying that this name is using the system entity called person name. So we're leveraging an entity right here. And then whatever they type will be put into a variable called customer name. So here's our variables. Okay, so where does the formula come in handy? For some reason, our form needs the customer names to be captured all caps. So we set a variable, which is a node, where we create a new variable called caps name, and then we define that as a formula, in this case, the upper formula, which turns that full name into all uppercase. And we'll do this together so you can see how the syntax is read and everything. Super easy, but very helpful. I'm going to give you 3 problem statements that you will probably run into. We could never exhaust this, even if we had 100 modules. Formatting, we did just a minute ago. When we changed that text to all caps, we were doing a type of formatting of a variable. In this case, you can also add kind of extracting pieces or reformatting dates, right? Because, for instance, there is a built-in formula for date time value for now, which will give you today's date time. But if you want to format that differently, and that's a formula, see date time now, but if you wanted to format that in a special way, you could use the text function, and then it's going to just format it day, month, year, hour, minutes, okay? And so you can change this format, and I will make sure you see the documentation that explains the formatting syntax. What's really cool is it does show it to you right in the product, and I will demonstrate that for you. But this is an example of where we commonly want to reformat a date, or we want to add to a date or subtract from a date. Very common. The formula function helps a lot there. This one is where you're taking numeric variables from text. So someone said, they were asked what country they were in. Again, we're using an entity here. And then they gave us a country that we slapped into a variable called var country, right? And then we set a global variable to be a number, not the country they set, by using an if statement. If the country is United States, I want you to pass 1010. Otherwise, pass 9999. This is a situation where maybe my database needs for us to give a cost code or a company code to that person because they're in country X. Instead of teaching people what country code they need, we do that behind the scenes by translating the country into the number of our desire based on using this function, okay? Another example is sometimes you will need to reformat variables that may be choices. So whenever a customer has a choice list of options and they click on one, sometimes that can need to be translated to a simple string in order to add it to a database where the field value in the database is a string. Because choices are complex. They're an identifier plus a display value, and you don't want to pass them as is into a string field. So you would use the text function to take that particular variable, that choice list variable, and convert it to a simple string, which would be the display value of what you see on the screen. That's also a very common scenario. And then the last one I'm going to talk to you about, which is the most complicated, and don't stress if you don't follow me right away, because we will get a chance to do something similar to this. Here we have an adaptive card, and the adaptive card is very simple. It has 2 or 3 words. And if you remember, I told you that prompts that are 1 or 2 words often provoke hallucinations because they're not questions. So the AI doesn't know how it should respond. So if they click on famous players, for instance, this is a chess mentor agent. If they click on famous player and just send that to chess.com, for instance, it'll take a guess on what they're talking about, but that's not a complete question. So it's not a good prompt. So the maker can supplement these clicks so that they're more than just the words, but also include a prompt. If you look over here, we're using the switch function, and this is longer. I didn't show you the whole function. But basically, if they click on famous players, then the prompt that will be sent to the AI for generating the response will be list 5 famous players and the strategies they are known for. So we're actually changing the prompt for the end user to get them the best response. You can do that in many different scenarios, kind of grab what they typed and improve upon it. In this case, what they selected and improve upon it to make it a better prompt. Okay, so let's see if we can look at this in the product. I have opened the Petco Pal agent, which is very similar to the one we did together for Petco. I made a few changes. And since I made changes and I figured you might want to match to exactly what I have here, check your student assets folder and you will get step-by-step instructions how to make your agent match this one in less than 3 minutes. It's really fast. Copy, paste, go. But you don't need to. The last agent that you did is good enough if you did the homework that we suggested at the end of the last module. So here we are in this agent, and what we want to see are the 3 things we talked about: entities, variables, and formulas. So first I'm going to go to settings. There's a lot to learn in settings. Don't get distracted. We're going to focus directly on entities right now. And you can see right away the entities that are built in out of the box. And they are all created there for you to use, but you may not revise. Okay? Don't assume that because you don't see red here, that red won't be understood as a color. It will. Okay? Now, you will find it out if it's pre-built by looking at the method. And there is only one custom in here. You can call a custom entity list also a closed list. Because there's 2 ways to create them. So when you click new entity, right, you can choose a closed list, which is a list of things that you really want to use, like for instance, what I've done here, but we'll talk about that further. Or you can create some type of regex where you're saying, I need the format to be like this, in case you want to make sure an account number is formatted like all of your account numbers are formatted, or your knowledge base articles, as you can see in this example, are formatted like that. If you are interested in learning more about regex, it is a little bit out of scope for this series, but you can learn more just by clicking learn more about entities, and it will teach you about both of these in more detail. All right. Now I created a closed list entity called veterinary services. And this is where I just added the animals. And I could add horse if I want to, but you just name it, give it a description, and start adding the items. Just type and add, type and add, type and add. And you can add synonyms to donkey. Easy to forget that you can't just hit done here. You've got to hit the plus sign so see it show up and then done. So now you've got all of your entities for veterinary services. This way, when people are talking, we can pick up which type of veterinary service they might need, and then maybe we can use that to direct them to particular information or content. Okay, so very helpful. You can also type in phrases to further assist the AI. Kind of unknown publicly, you probably need to not only add synonyms, but also add a phrase in there to make it more understandable from an AI perspective. Once you have that in there, you can now use it in anything. Let's try using one of these out of the box ones first. So I'm just going to go into my topics, and I'm going to go to the conversation start. Since you've already seen that and you get that, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to ask a question about what their name is. So I'm just going to do add and then ask a question. Some of these are so self-evident. We almost don't have to go over all of them. And I say, what is your full name? When you ask questions, I would be as clear as possible, because if you just said, what is your name, they might just give you your first name. Okay, so just be aware of, you need to be clear within users. But now you can identify this as an entity, and we have one, and that's called the person name. Okay, and as you can see by the description, a person's partial or full name extracted as a string. So now we have it, and it automatically puts it in a variable. Remember I told you about the box? So now that person's name, as soon as they type it, is going in that box. But I don't like this name var1, because I'm going to end up with var 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm not going to be able to tell the difference between them. So I'm going to click on var 1, and when I do, it's going to show me that name on the right panel, and I can change the name, because var 1, that's going to be hard to follow. So I'm going to change it to person name. I can call it whatever I'd like, but I think I might do full name, and then it will take that as the new name for the variable. Now I'm going to do a little bit of conversion. I'm going to send a message, and I'm going to say, thank you in all caps, but I also want their name in all caps. Now, I'm not suggesting you ever do this because it sounds like you're shouting. I just want to demonstrate the formula. So as I mentioned before, you want to look for the formula icon in this case. There's the FX for Power FX. You click on that, and now you can make your formula. And we talked about the upper formula. When you type the formula and you put the open paren, it will show you the syntax so that you can see how this has to be formatted. It'll even explain what that formula does. So try the formulas that you know in Excel or in other parts of the Power Platform. Now, to get to the variable that I want to make uppercase, I'm going to type the word topic, which lets it know, okay, I want something from this topic. If it was global, I would start with the word global. But right now, I want something from this topic. I'm going to hit a dot, and it'll give me all the variables that are available in this topic. We only made one, so you'll see it. But if you hit a list, you just click on the one you want. And then you notice it's still red, right? Because we didn't finish the syntax. Let's close that with a paren, and we get a green check mark. Everything is good. And now we have thank you with that formula, which will give us thank you and my name in all caps. So let's test. Always test your formulas before you continue. Like don't do a lot of formulas and then test like as you go with formulas so that you can correct anything, because it might be a dependency for the next thing, right? So I'm going to refresh this because we added a question after the start. So it'll ask that question, what is your full name? And I'm going to put my name here. And then you'll see that this message will be next, which says, thank you, Audrey Gordon, in all caps. Remember that an entity pulls that thing out of a long sentence. And I'm just going to add that because I didn't show you that. I'm going to ask a question and say, how old are you? Okay, kind of a rude question for most women. But I'm going to now select the age. And I will put that in a variable called age. Okay, as soon as that switches to age, now I want you to see this happen. Okay, so I'm going to refresh it. I didn't remove the thank you. I probably should have moved that down, but that's okay. Just for this training, I'm going to refresh. It's going to ask me what my name is, and I will put my name in. Notice I'm using lowercase letters. It's going to convert that to uppercase in a message, and it's going to ask me how old I am. I'm going to say, last year I turned 25 years old. Okay, so you see I typed a lot of stuff in there, and normally you might have to manipulate that string. In this case, you don't. It's just going to pull out the 25, all right? And you can find these variables right here on the variables on your toolbar here. You can just use test to find what you've tested in the test panel. And you can see that the only thing it took was the 25. It ignored last year I turned, it don't care. It was told to use the entity, and the entity pulled out the age. All right, so that is all we're going to cover for this video. But I promise you, we will get a chance to use some of these core tools as soon as possible in our next upcoming modules. Thank you. I look forward to the next one.